I will start this by saying that the best meal plan for losing fat or gaining muscle boils down to two things. One, can you follow it? And two, does it have enough protein and calories? For the most part, comes down to preference. You have a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and you could argue efficiency and optimization and all that stuff all day long. But in reality, if you train like a madman, that ends up turning into the limiting factor far before diet ever does. So again, you can talk about timing, you can talk about frequency, you can talk about macronutrient distribution, all this fun stuff. I would say you more than 80-20 arbitrarily, you 90-10 this by did I get enough protein during the day and did I get enough calories, and when combined, do I eat enough so that I gain 1% of my body weight per month, which turns into 0.25% of your total body weight per week on average, or do I lose 10% of my body weight over a 6-month period? Now, as far as enough, the type of diet you have, if you follow those two guidelines, can you follow it? Does it have enough protein and calories? Then you can really reach your goals within reason. For weight loss or fat loss, you tend to get a little bit hungrier, and for a meal plan in a situation like that, protein tends to go up a little bit because protein keeps people fuller a bit longer, and then the plant material, roughage, I'll just say, tends to go up a little bit too, take up a little bit more space in your stomach. So what maybe you had before in the form of something super dense, like maybe you like to eat sandwiches, relatively dense in terms of, well, I eat this amount of carbohydrate, or bagels, pasta, things like that, a lot of carbohydrates in a minimum amount of space. You might take some of those calories and turn them into something like cabbage, broccoli, green beans to give you more volume to keep you fuller for longer. That comes down to like a can you stick with it sort of a question. To wrap this up, do you have enough protein? Do you have enough total calories? And do you have the meals, foods, and timing structured that so you can stick to it? And if you feel hungry, you lower the calorie density, which means raising the amount of food volume, which typically means I go more for fruits and vegetables to take up more space. And for gaining body weight, if you have trouble sticking to it, eating a ton of fruit and vegetables to try and gain body weight, then you'd go more towards the higher density, typically carbohydrate sources, although really easy to add fat calories in there too.
So if you're looking at it as personal preference, then outline what a day of eating for Dr. Kashey would look like if he was trying to put on muscle and if he was trying to get shredded.
For trying to build muscle mass or lose fat, I eat the same amount of meals every day. I eat about 4 times a day. I eat about 4 times per day, and for me, I get a range of protein. I keep my protein in a range, and I keep the calories pretty static. So I might get between 200 and 250 grams of protein in a day, depending on how hungry I feel, and I will raise or lower the amount of vegetables I eat depending on how hungry I get as well. So I eat 4 times. I eat between 200 and 250 grams of protein. I would say about half of that comes from meat, about 25% of it comes from dairy, and another 25% comes from the other food sources. Things like oats, beans, fruits and vegetables, what limited protein they have. Probably about 25% of my total protein comes from that. And again, I modify the plant food sources based on how hungry I feel. So the same thing I do to retain muscle as I do to build it. I just change the total number of calories and the density of those calories I eat.
Now, what is the minimum amount of calories you can eat during a shred?
If you cruise the inner tubes, you see a pretty common consensus, at least the last time I checked, that about 7 calories per pound is about the sort of minimum that a person would eat to lose body weight. The previous, I would say, when we spoke about like how the safe amount of time to lose and or gain weight versus the lowest amount of calories you can consume, sort of ask the same question. So I would actually follow closer to how much do I lower my calories so that I can lower my body mass by 10% over 6 months. That ends up dictating your calories more than how low can I go, because research exists where you can go a pretty long time eating nothing, and that would stink and very difficult to come back from, although you can do it. If your weight loss has stalled, then you can lower your calories, and if your weight loss continues stalling to the point to where you would have to lower your prescribed calories on a daily basis below 7 calories per pound, then you probably have some sort of measurement issue where maybe you eat more than you think you eat or have measured, or your activity has gone down to almost nothing, because when your calories get that low, you also lay around and do nothing, which again defeats the purpose of lowering the calories. So the whole how low can I make my calories also brings in this sort of theory of constrained energy expenditure into the equation, pun intended, that if you make your calories really low, you will move less. And so if you move less, you burn fewer calories, which defeats the purpose of of lowering them. So it ends up turning into a little bit of a balance of, instead of how little can I eat, to how much can I eat and still lose weight. So if you can maximize the amount of food you eat while still lowering your scale weight by still losing body mass on a weekly basis, that will actually give you the best bang for buck overall, because you can still train and make progress in the gym and lose fat and sort of kill all the birds with one stone.
And how do you sell that idea to somebody who wants to get abs in time for summer?
Well, excellent question. We get an assessment or assess the total amount of body fat the person has, typically just visually, and depending on the training history of the individual, BMI tends to turn into a decent proxy for body fat, decent enough, that sometimes that just means next summer.
If this was helpful, you probably want to know how fast you can get jacked, so watch this video next.